I've told you for months, China isn't our friend, and China is a huge fork in the road. It is the choice at this election. Now, for others, the choice at this election is climate change or economic policy. For me, the choice at this election is between a government that is willing to stand up for the very values I just spoke about, that is willing to displease other nations, as opposed to just manage the relationship, which is code for suck up and sit back. Now, the Prime Minister has been very clear about what his attitude is, particularly to the country of China, a country that pretty much says, unless you clap them on as they do the worst, then you are somehow part of the problem. But of course, if you wish to be part of the global community, then you must be held to the same standards as every other country. So if something went wrong in your country that eventually was exported around the world and 5 million people died as a result of it, there should be a proper investigation. But when our Prime Minister asked for that, all hell broke loose. Again, China is back in the news because of the comments of a punch-drunk former Prime Minister in Paul Keating, still pretending that he's running around in the ring like it's the 1980s. But the reality is it's 2021 and he is a sad figure. Here's what the PM had to say today about what in his heart drives him and why I think this matters when it comes to the fork in the road that is this election.
I'm not seeking to pandering to others in other places and try and press them. I have one audience, and that's the Australian people, and I have to do the right thing for them. And that often means you've got to be strong on these things, and you've got to be prepared to cop the flack and the sledges that they come from, whether it's from Anthony Albanese or elsewhere.
And this is the thing. If you are willing to stand up for the country, then also, yes, there's a fight coming up where he's fighting for his own job, he's fighting for his own prestige, he's fighting for his own place in Wikipedia. But he also knows that it is a fork in the road. And he knows that the opposite way of dealing with things like China or standing up for our national security, which means pissing off people like France, is our old mate Ichwe Albo.
To make sure that we aren't pushed around in this part of the world. Now, but the views that Paul Keating have expressed is in line with many, I think, in the Labor Party, and that's why, I said at the start, how we secure Australia's interests in our part of the world, you've got to be strong, you've got to be able to stand up for it.
Now, also, when we talk about Albo, today, if you pay attention, this is what he wanted you to hear when it comes to China.
What we need is competition without catastrophe. That requires diplomacy. That requires engagement, but it also requires acknowledging that China's posture has changed in recent times, and that's had an economic impact. And that is the responsibility of China changing its position as they have in recent years.
I'll stand up for Australia versus a word salad, and that's the toughest he can get when it comes to China. The reality is that Albo, well, like all pages of the Kama Sutra, can bend himself into all positions, like this.
The Foreign Minister and the government need to take control of this and exercise a little bit of discipline in their ranks, because that clearly is in Australia's national interest.
But it isn't just Anthony Albanese. You see, he will say whatever to make himself the smallest possible target, to make him seem incredibly reasonable, as if he doesn't take the phone calls of Karen or PJK telling him how the world should really work. It's why we call him Ichwe Albo. And on national security, there isn't an Ichwe. There's an all in or not. Think about that more than any day today about why that matters. But it isn't just him. Who would be in the cabinet table with him making decisions about national security? Well, there's the person who would like to represent us on the world stage, Penny Wong, the Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister.
What we need to do, what we should do, is to respond calmly and strategically and not be emotional. And I think it's very important that we respond in a calm and measured way. What we need to do now is to work out how we deal with a China that regrettably behaves like this.
Well, how would you do it?
Well, I think the two things we need to do. The first is we need to work with like-mindeds, with partners and allies, aligned nations, in reinforcing both the rules and the norms and the standards of behaviour that we want we want for our region and for the world.
Oh, yeah, I'll stand up for Australia or another word salad. Then what about the shadow Home Affairs Minister, Christina Keneally, who of course is desperately trying to get to the lower house so she continued to fail up the political line, eventually becoming leader of the opposition leader, minister, prime minister, governor, pope, president, weather girl in Las Vegas. You know, that's the plan. Well, when she was campaigning for the seat that she will definitely win, because Labor definitely wins the seat of Fowler, guess who she met with and she took photos of, and they're still on her Twitter feed, of a Chinese propagandist from the United Front. The United Front, by the way, has a position that Taiwan is part of China, and she's standing with them. Nothing to see here. Oh, they're completely the same as the government when it comes to China. And then at the state level, you have people like Emperor McGowan, who believe that when the international borders open, it's more important for him to go to Beijing than it is to go to Brisbane. Here in part is what he had to say about why the rest of the country doesn't understand why China is essentially just a giant place to sell stuff to. And sure, some of that stuff is used by slave labour for us to buy back, but, you know, shh.
Western Australia's trading relationship and our exports are very, very strong and support Australia during a difficult period. Our major export partner is China, and so that's just a simple fact. If people want to shut down trade with China, we'll look forward to a much, much, much lower standard of living. And I think we just need to understand that. And so that's the point I'm making.
So he's the front man of a band that's got very rich off dealing with China, looking the other way when it comes to human rights. You know, like the bloke who's telling us now that there's billions of dollars to be made, mainly by him, when it comes to climate change. Come on, Twiggy, let's just have a beer. We're all in this together, right? Oh, isn't that what we say to the people? Shh, don't worry about it. We're here for a long time.